Please give it up for March Madness Tournament Champion US 29. That's right, today we're going to be doing US Highway 29. US 29 is a very cool and awesome road as it goes through several big cities along its route, like the city of Atlanta, the city of Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, the city of Greensboro, and including also our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. In fact, it is one of 3 US highways to enter Washington, D.C., and we have already done another one, US 1. So let us get started with this cool and awesome road and let us go through these downtowns of these big cities. But first, you're watching TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button. And if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today, where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with 1 free extra request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As you can see here, this is the map of US Highway 29 as it starts at a junction with the US 90 and 98 in Pensacola, Florida, and travels all the way up to a junction with Interstate 70 and Maryland Highway 99 in Ellicott City, Maryland. And the colored portion is the part that I've been on personally. So with that, I'm going northbound on US 29. So we begin here on US 90 and 98 itself, where you can see that we do get a US 29 shield here, so that is awesome by FDOT. And we can also see Interstate 110 in the distance, which is the 110 that I've been on, because I've been to Pensacola, Florida a few times. Also, US 98 was US 29's opponent in the championship round of the March Madness tournament, but sadly it lost to US 29, so that's why I'm doing this video. But we will be doing US Highway 98 very soon, so stay tuned for that. And our first mileage sign on US Highway 29, we get Century, Florida as our primary from 42 miles away. I would also like to see Flomaton, Alabama on here, despite it being slightly smaller than Century, because Cantonment here is just an unincorporated community still within the Pensacola area, and I do not like seeing unincorporated community sign. Our first major junction is with Interstate 10, and since we're in far western Florida, it's getting good control cities of Tallahassee eastbound and Mobile westbound. And here we have our first intersection request. This one was made by Freeway Twist, as he wanted to see the alternate 90 junction because his grandparents live near this road, so thank you for that request. And always up the road, we do get Flomaton as our primary from 21 miles away. I mean, again, you could start signing something further, but at least it's good to see a out-of-state control here. And here in Century, we meet with Florida Highway 4, and it gets no control cities for some reason. And here we are entering into the state of Alabama as we get a welcome sign for Flomaton, and we also get this very terrible looking Sweet Home Alabama sign. And here in downtown Flomaton, we meet with US Highway 31, and we are going to be concurrent with it as we're going to be heading towards Brewton. And if you want to check out our series on US 31, it's in the top right corner here. Also, this sign has seen way better days as it's very faded. Here in Brewton, we split off from US Highway 31 as we're now getting signed for Andalusia as our next control city, while US 31 will be heading north towards Evergreen. And here we get a one-liner for just Andalusia from 43 miles away. Skipping ahead to the Andalusia area, we meet with US Highway 84, and we're now going to have a short concurrency with it around the city of Andalusia. Here's where we split off from US Highway 84 as US 29 is going to be continuing north of here. And in fact, our next mileage sign, we get Brantley on the top line from 25 miles away and Troy from 54. Troy is a good choice because that's where we meet with US Highway 231. Here in Brantley, we meet with US Highway 331, which is mainly an orphan child of US 31. And while it does not meet any other of its siblings, it does come within a couple miles of US 31, but I think it should just be a child of like US 29 instead, or US 98, because it ends at US 98. Here's where we split off from US Highway 331 as they'll head north up towards Montgomery. We're not going to be heading northeast towards Troy with Alabama Highway 10. Here in Troy, we meet with US Highway 231 as it's being signed for Bungridge and Ozark, while we're going to be heading into downtown Troy here. And taking a look on US 231, we can see that we're now getting signed for Laverne and Union Springs. Union Springs is a great choice. And Montgomery is an awesome choice for US Highway 231. Here we meet with US Highway 82 in Union Springs, and we're now going to be concurrent with it as we head through this town. And here's where we split off from US Highway 82 as I'll head towards Eufaula, while we're going to be heading towards Tuskegee and Auburn respectively. Here in Tuskegee, we meet the great US Highway 80, and if you're going to check out a series on US 80, it's in the top right corner here. And I also like how US 80 and Alabama 81 are concurrent here. Here's where we split off from US Highway 80, as US 80 will be heading down towards Columbus, Georgia and Phoenix City, while we're going to be continuing towards Interstate 85, or you can just take Alabama 186 here, that'll take you over to Interstate 85. And no, sadly, that is not a Auburn University themed color arrow. That is actually an arrow used mainly for county routes. It's just I don't know why AlDOT gave that to Interstate 85 here. And skipping ahead to the Auburn area, we're now going to be joining with Interstate 85 for one of 4 times, but we're now going to be mainly paralleling it between here and all the way up to Greensboro, North Carolina. Here's where we split off from Interstate 85 for the first time, and we can see that 29 northbound is getting signed for Opelika. Opelika is actually south of here. 29 northbound does not go through anything significant. In fact, if we take a look, it's just like a basically redundant exit. I don't know why they have US 29 exiting all the way down here when it goes through nothing. It should just exit all the way up here and land at Alabama instead of all the way down here just north of Opelika. It's like the Interstate 95 and US 301 situation all over again. But instead of just it being 2 redundant exits, there's actually a couple of smaller exits between the exit 64 junction and the exit 79 junction. So skipping ahead to Atlanta, we can see we're meeting with Interstate 85 for a second time. And here we are meeting Alabama Highway 50, and we're now getting signed for West Point, Georgia as our next control city. And here we are entering into the state of Georgia, and Georgia can do a whole lot better than this, just Georgia state line. But we do get a West Point city limit sign, so that is pretty cool. Here in downtown West Point, we're now going to be concurrent with Georgia Highway 14 as we're now going to be heading towards Pine Mountain and LaGrange. And after crossing over the Chattahoochee River, we get a one-liner here for LaGrange from 16 miles away. And here in LaGrange, we meet with US Highway 27, one of the earliest US highways that I've done. And if you want to check it out, you can check it out in the top right corner here. And after that short concurrency with US 27, we're now going to be splitting off from it, but for some reason GDOT does not give us any signage for 29 or 27 here. So skipping ahead to Hogansville, Georgia, we can see that our next control city is now Noonan. But our next mileage town, we're now getting signed for Moreland from 12 miles away. What? No, I want to see Noonan. If you're signing Noonan at that previous junction, Noonan should be on our mileage sign here, GDOT. Not Moreland. Moreland is tiny compared to Noonan. Here in Grantville, we meet with Interstate 85 for another time, and no, I'm not going to be showing these all the time. I'm just going to be showing the major ones here. And after going through Grantville, we get another one-liner for just Moreland from 4 miles away. No, I don't want to see Moreland. I want to see more Noonan. Put Noonan on here, GDOT, not Moreland. Here in the Moreland area, we meet with US 27 alternate, and we're now going to be concurrent with it as we head towards Noonan. And luckily on our next mileage time, we actually now get Carrollton as our primary from 24 miles away. So it looks like that they're favoring US 27 alternate here. And and luckily to see Noonan on this mileage sign. It should have been on the previous two that we saw earlier. Here in downtown Noonan, we split off from US 27 alternate as they'll head up towards Carrollton, while US 29 is going to be heading towards the Atlanta exurbs now. In fact, we get Palmetto as our primary from only 12 miles away on here, which makes sense because if you want to get to like downtown Atlanta or Atlanta proper, it is faster to take Interstate 85. And here in Palmetto, we're actually now getting signed for Fairburn and the city of Atlanta itself. That is awesome here, G-Dot. Well done. Here we finally split off from Georgia Highway 14, and the connector route will actually take you over to Interstate 85 and 285 because we do not have an interchange with them at all, because where we meet the southwestern part of it, that's where 85 and 285 split off from each other, and there wasn't a room to build any sort of interchange with US 29. And here we meet with Georgia Highway 6, which will actually take you over to Interstate 85 as well, along with the International Airport. Here we meet with Georgia Highway 154 and 166 here, and here is US 29 going under Interstate 20. And it actually has a very, very odd indirect interchange with it, as we can see that on Interstate 20 itself, we do have an exit for US 29 and US 19 for some reason, but it doesn't meet with US Highway 29 at all. It goes to some surface road, and then you have to take that surface road to get to US Highway 29, which is just very strange for some reason. And after all of that, we're now going to be joining with US Highway 19 and 41, and I'm going to be skipping this concurrency because I already covered it in both US 19 and the US 41 southern half. So here's where we split off from US 19 and 41 to join with US 78 and US 278, and this air shield is always super funny to look at because it's been like who knows how long and they still haven't fixed that US 278 error. Now we're meeting with Interstate 75 and 85 here in downtown Atlanta, and just like how we saw on Interstate 20, the exits are completely different here in downtown. Going northbound on the downtown connector, we get US 19 and 29, but going southbound, we get US 78 and 278. So it looks like no matter which direction you're going, you're neglecting two different highways. Like, come on, man. Also, both of those are my own pictures. Here we meet with US Highway 23, and 23 is now going to be concurrent with 78, 278, and 29 here. And here's where US Highway 278 splits off from US 29 and 23 and 78 here. And here's where US 23 splits off from US 29 and 78, as 23 will be heading north towards North Carolina, while 29 and 78 are going to be heading towards Athens now. Here's where 29 splits off from US Highway 78, as US 78 will be heading east towards Athens, while 29 is going to be heading north towards Lawrenceville. No need for that Kentucky treatment. And I guess, well, technically there's basically no time difference between taking either 29 or 78 to get to Athens. I think it's okay to sign it on 78 because, as it states, that US 78 is going to become more of a freeway, while US 29 still has to go through a couple of Atlanta suburbs to get to Georgia Highway 316. And here on the east side of Atlanta, we meet with Interstate 285 here, which gets no control cities. And here in Lawrenceville, we're now going to be joining with Georgia Highway 316, which in the future will most likely become like Interstate 585 or something, as we're now getting signed for Winder. No, that should be Athens. Athens is a major city in Georgia and is home to UGA. Winder is just some small town compared to Athens along the way. No, G-Dot, boo. Luckily here in Winder, we are now getting signed for Athens as our next control city, so that is awesome. And here we reunite with US Highway 78 on the outskirts of Athens, and we're now going to become the Athens bypass loop, so yay. Here we meet with US Highway 129 and 441 as they're getting signed for Watkinsville and Madison going southbound, while northbound is going to be joining with us, and we're now going to have a US Highway quad concurrency here. And here's where US 78 finally splits off from US Highway 29, as we're now getting signed for Danielsville and Commerce. Commerce is for 129 and 441, while Danielsville is for US 29. Here's where US 129 and 441 splits off from US 29, as they'll head up towards Commerce and Jefferson, while 29 is getting signed north for Danielsville and Hartwell now. I felt like it if it had Hartwell on that previous sign where US 78 split off from the three highways, because Hartwell is the next major place they'll be passing through here in the state of Georgia. And plus, if you wanted to get to Greenville from here, you're better off just trying to find a way back onto Interstate 85 instead of taking 29 all the way up there. And we're also going to be talking about this air shield, as that's supposed to be to Georgia Highway 72 instead of US 72. But in theory, you can take US 29 to get to US Highway 72. It'll just take you 4.5 hours to get to Chattanooga from here. But in theory, that sign is technically correct. And in fact, on the next mallet town, we're now getting signed for Hartwell in the top line. And wait, am I seeing that correctly? Is that being signed for Greenville from 98 miles away?
I was not expecting that.
Hey, we were just talking about that place. It's awesome to be being signed on US Highway 29, despite US 29 not being the fastest way to get there, but this is an awesome sign, G-Dot. Also, we do get a sign telling us that we're going to be taking us towards Georgia 72. And here is that junction with Georgia Highway 72. And this junction with US Highway 29 was requested by East Coast Reviewer, so thank you for that request, because he wanted to see it because it is his favorite route of all time. But on our next mileage channel, we do get Hartwell as our primary once again from 39 miles away, which could make sense. But our next mileage channel, we're now getting Royston as our primary from only 16 miles away. Royston has half the population of Hartwell, and will only meet with one Georgia State highway there. I want to see Hartwell or even Anderson now. Just start signing Anderson, South Carolina, G-Dot. Here in Royston, we are meeting with Georgia Highway 17, and we're now getting signed for Hartwell as our next control city. And here in Hartwell, we're now getting signed for Anderson and Elberton as our next two control cities. Actually, Elberton is for Georgia Highway 77, while we're going to be heading north towards Anderson now. And here we are crossing over the Savannah River and into the state of South Carolina. And here in South Carolina, we actually passed by right next to Lake Hartwell here, so there's a scenic cutoff point for it. And here we get a one-liner just for Anderson from 12 miles away after our first major junction with a state highway. And here in Anderson, we meet with US Highway 76 and 178 here, and for some reason they're being signed as the truck routes. And we also have some pictures of the junction, which was provided by East Coast Reviews, so thank you for these couple of pictures. You can see that there's a reassurance shield for 29, 76, and 178. And here's a couple more of East Coast Reviews pictures, as here's where 29 splits off from US Highway 76, as it's just getting signed for Anderson University and one of the many offices for the South Carolina DMV. And a ways up the road, we're now getting signed solely for Greenville, which is an awesome choice because we're about to be merging into Interstate 85 soon. Here you meet the road that'll take you over to South Carolina Highway 8 along with Interstate 85 southbound, because the 85 and 29 junction is a Y junction, so you'll just default onto 85 northbound. In fact, here's that Y junction, as we're now going to have our second concurrency with Interstate 85. And here's my own picture of 29 joining with Interstate 185 as we head into downtown Greenville, while 85 is now getting signed north for Spartanburg. I mean, to be fair, while Spartanburg is part of the Greenville-Spartanburg Metro, I would like to see Charlotte, because Charlotte is the next major city that 85 will be passing through. Plus, it's way bigger than Spartanburg. And here on Interstate 185 itself, note this is actually the free portion of Interstate 185. We're meeting with US Highway 25 here, which is being signed for Travelers Rest, And I like this kind of exit shield here, as it kind of reminds me of like Connecticut or one of the northeastern states. And always up or like a mile and a half up the road, this is the northern terminus of Interstate 185, but we do get a Interstate 385 shield peeking out right behind this pole here, so that is awesome. And here in downtown Greenville, we meet the 385 business route that will take you over to Interstate 385 proper. And if you want to check out a video on 385, it's in the top right corner here. Here we meet with US Highway 123, also in downtown Greenville, and it will also take you over to Interstate 385. And we also have an indirect junction with US Highway 276 here, as US 276 will also be taking you to downtown Greenville. And here's my own picture on US 29 of the road that'll take you into the campus of Bob Jones University. For some reason I took a picture of this road like when I visited back in 2024. I don't know why, but at least I do have a picture of it. And here we meet with South Carolina Highway 291. And if we take a look on South Carolina Highway 291, we can see that there's the still old shields for South Carolina 291, and this was again provided by East Coast Reviews, so thank you for the picture. Here we meet with South Carolina 101 and 290 as they're getting signed for Greer, and we're now getting signed for Spartanburg as our next control city. Still in Greer, we'll also meet with the Great South Carolina Highway 14, which will take you north towards Landrum, while we're still getting signed for Spartanburg still. Here in Lyman, South Carolina, we meet with South Carolina routes 129 and 292, and we can see that they're more of a generic looking shield instead of the normal South Carolina highway shields. And once again, this was provided by East Coast Reviews, so thank you. And now we're meeting with Interstate 85 on the outskirts of Lyman, and we can see that 85 is now getting signed north for Charlotte, which is an awesome choice. And here's my own picture of the 29 junction going southbound, and we can see it's now getting signed for Welliford and Lyman respectively. And here's one more picture of East Coast Reviews pictures, and this one is of the Interstate 26 junction on US Highway 29, getting signed for Asheville and Columbia respectively. And here in downtown Spartanburg, we meet with US Highway 221 and South Carolina Highway 56 here. And US 221 is actually a very interesting road. I definitely want to do a video on it someday. We also meet, and this here is in Cowpens. We're meeting with South Carolina Highway 110 here, which will actually take you up towards the Battle of Cowpens. So if you like Revolutionary War stuff, definitely check out this place. And we can see that at this junction, we're now getting signed north for Gaffney as our next control city. Here in Gaffney, we meet with South Carolina Highway 11 and 18 as they're going to be heading towards Union, while we're now getting signed for Shelby and Gastonia as our next two control cities. Actually, US 29 doesn't go to Shelby, it meets with a North Carolina highway that will take you up there, but Gastonia is a good choice for 29. In fact, our next mileage time, we actually now get Grover and Gastonia, so two North Carolina places are as our next two places. And here, as our last exit on Interstate 85, we're meeting it with it once again, and we can see that it's being signed for Spartanburg and Charlotte respectively. And here's my own picture of the 29 exit off of Interstate 85 here, as we're not just being signed for Grover. And here we get a one-liner for Grover from 1 mile away. No, I want to see like Gastonia on here, or even Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain would even be a better choice for 29 instead of Interstate 85. I do not like seeing Kings Mountain assigned on Interstate 85. It's better for US 29. And now we're entering into the state of North Carolina. And we can see that we're now getting signed for Kings Mountain, which, like I said, is a good choice for US 29. And here's the road that I was talking about earlier, which will take you up towards Shelby. And still in Grover, we actually passed by Highway 29 Grill, so this is a pretty nice looking place. I like how it's named after US 29, just like how the 19 Church and the US 63 Realty up in Wisconsin. And now we're going to be joining with Interstate 85, as we definitely should be signed for Charlotte now instead of just Kings Mountain. And here's my own picture of 29 joining with US Highway 74. And I'm going to be skipping this concurrency because I already covered it in the 74 video, which you can check out in the top right corner here. And on the outskirts of Charlotte, which we can see in the distance here, is where US 29 splits off from US Highway 74. And here we're meeting with Interstate 77 along with US Highway 21, and they're getting signed for Statesville. Statesville is okay for 21, but not for 77. You could sign with Ville for Interstate 77, but not Statesville. And US 29 also passes right next to Bank of America Stadium, so that is awesome. And here's a picture of the Charlotte area as we're heading through the city. And here we meet with Interstate 277, the inner ring road for the city of Charlotte, as that'll take you back towards Interstate 77 and US 21. And here we meet with the Charlotte Highway 4 here, and for some reason it's getting the same treatment as a state highway instead of its own separate shield. And Charlotte is one of the 2 cities in the entire country where it has its own separate highway system. The other one is being Washington, D.C. So you could say that US 29 connects the 2 cities that have their own highway system, so that is awesome. Here is where we split off from North Carolina Highway 49, which actually joined us somewhere in downtown Charlotte. And now we're meeting with the state's longest highway, North Carolina Highway 24 here. And now we're meeting with Interstate 485, which is just getting signed for inner and outer, along with the cardinal directions here. So I wonder if the inner and outer are its actual control cities instead of just what it's being called. And here's my own picture of the 29 exit on Interstate 485, where we can see that we're now getting signed for Concord. Here in Concord, we meet with Truck North Carolina Highway 73 along with US Highway 601, and these 3 highways are not going to be concurrent as we head towards our next couple of places. Here we meet with Interstate 85 getting signed for Charlotte and Greensboro, 2 awesome control cities, which is rare by NCDOT, and we can see that we're now getting signed north for Kannapolis and Landis. I mean, we're already basically in Kannapolis, so you can just do like Landis and China Grove, or just Landis by itself here in CDOT. Here we meet with North Carolina Highway 3 in front of this Arby's here. And here we meet with North Carolina Highway 152, which will take you over to Interstate 85 and 601, as it's getting signed for Rockwell, while we're not getting signed north for Salisbury, which is a great choice. In Salisbury, we're now going to be joining with US Highway 70 for a long concurrency, while we're also meeting with US Highway 601 for a second time here. Also, US 601 is another one of these highways that I definitely want to do someday. And this is actually north of Salisbury, and in Spencer we pass by the North Carolina Highway Transportation Museum, which is a place I definitely recommend. I went there last February and it was very cool. I managed to get myself a mug and a magnet from there. So if you ever have an opportunity to check it out, definitely do it. And here's my own picture of US 29 and 70 from the Transportation Museum. And now we're going to be joining with the Interstate 85 and US Highway 52 as we're now getting signed for Greensboro, which is an awesome choice. Here's my picture of US 29, 52, and 70 joining with Interstate 285 here, as we're getting signed for Lexington and Winston-Salem, while Interstate 85 is going to be heading north towards Greensboro and High Point. Here's where we split off from Interstate 285 and US 52, as we're now going to be solely signed for High Point. And here in the Lexington area, we're actually meeting with US Highway 64 here, getting signed west for Moxville. And here's my own picture of US 64 splitting off from 29 and 70, and I kind of like how the control city is actually on top of the highway instead of on the bottom, which is a pretty cool looking design. And we can see that we're still getting signed for High Point. And here we have our first mileage sign since basically northern South Carolina, and we can see High Point is our primary from 18 miles away. And this is where US 70 finally splits off from us, as it's going to be joining with North Carolina Highway 68, getting signed for the National Highway in Thomasville and West High Point. No, I'm not going to be doing the joke again. It was funny the first time, and it probably will not be funny the second time around. But for some random reason, on current Street View, we're still getting 70 shields despite US 70 leaving us, so I have no idea what's going on here. Hear me with Interstate 74 getting signed for Winston-Salem and Asheboro, and there also used to be a US 311 shield here, but they took that down. Hear me with Interstate 85, and this is going to be our last concurrency with it as we head towards Greensboro. And here is where we finally say goodbye to Interstate 85, as they'll head up towards Durham and Sanford because of 421. While 421 northbound is going to be joining with the Interstate 73 here, as we're all getting signed for Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and Martinsville. Also, for some reason, I don't know why they still have the 70 shield and 85 business shield on here when these two highways have not existed with the US 29 for a good few years now, so again, I don't know what's going on there. And hearing me with US Highway 220 getting signed for Asheboro southbound, while 220 northbound will take you up towards Interstate 40 westbound, because the 29 and 40 junction is also another Y junction, so you cannot go onto 40 westbound from 29 northbound. Here we are merging into Interstate 40, and we can see that we're now getting signed for Durham as our next control city, so that is awesome. And here is where US 29 and 220 splits off from Interstate 40, as we're now getting signed north for Reedsville. I mean, you could sign for Danville because that is our next major place we'll be going to. Here is where US 220 splits off from US Highway 29, as I'll be joining with US Highway 70 here. And we can see that US 70 is being signed for a couple of Kentucky treatments, which kind of makes sense because we're still in the Greensboro area. Anyways, up the road, we're now meeting with Interstate 785 and 840, as they're getting signed of three North Carolina's biggest cities, so that is awesome control cities here, NC Dot. And the ways up the road, we're now getting a pull through for US 29, getting signed for Reedsville and Danville respectively. Now that's how you do a pull through. And we finally get another mileage sign with Danville as our primary from 32 miles away. Here in Reedsville, we meet with US Highway 158, and along with North Carolina Highway 87, and 158 eastbound is actually joining with 29. For some reason, does not have a cardinal direction, nor do we have any control cities for neither 29 or 158. Here's where US 158 splits off from US 29 to join with North Carolina Highway 14. Also, what is the deal with US 29 meaning state highways numbered 14 in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina? Here in Danville, we're now going to be joining with US Highway 58 as we head towards Lynchburg and South Boston. I mean, that South Boston could definitely be South Hill, but South Boston is where US 58 meets with US 501, and it's decently sized, so I guess it's okay. And as we're hopping onto the ramp, we can see that VDOT does give us a welcome to Virginia sign, because the 29 and 58 interchange is literally right on the North Carolina and Virginia border. Here we split off from US Highway 58, as that will be heading towards South Boston with US Highway 360, and 29 is now getting signed north for Lynchburg still, along with the Danville Expressway. In our next mileage time, we do get Lynchburg as our primary from 57 miles away. Here in Chatham, we are now getting signed for Charlottesville from 113 miles away, so that is awesome. And here in Lynchburg, we meet with US Highway 460, and we're now going to have a concurrency with it as we head towards Charlottesville and Appomattox. Like I said in the 460 video, that should be Petersburg. Also, we do get a sign for Liberty University, so that is awesome. Here's where we split off from US Highway 460 as I'll head towards Appomattox, as we're now going to be heading towards Amherst and Charlottesville now. In fact, our next mileage time we get Amherst on the top line from 12 miles away, and Charlottesville as our primary from 61. Here we meet with US Highway 60 in Amherst, and we can see in the distance that if you want to get to Lexington, Virginia, and Richmond, you should take the US Highway 60 exit here. But for some reason, it's its own separate sign instead of being on the sign for US Highway 60. I feel like Lexington and Richmond would be way more important towns than Amherst, so put Lexington and Richmond on here, not just Amherst. And luckily after that junction, we do get another mileage sign, and we're now getting signed for Washington DC from 164 miles away. So this is actually beating out US 1 for its earliest signage of Washington DC, as I believe that was only being signed from like 120 miles away. So that is awesome being it signed from Amherst. But once we meet with Interstate 64 here in Charlottesville, we're now getting signed for Culpeper as well, while 64 westbound is getting signed for Stanton. No, that should be Charleston, West Virginia, not Stanton. Here we meet with US Highway 250 in Charlottesville, and we're now going to have a concurrency with it. And our next mileage time we actually now get Richmond as our primary from 73 miles away, so I like them favoring US 250 here. And here's where we split off from US Highway 250 as they'll be heading towards Richmond. And we can see that 29 northbound is being signed for Washington once again. Here we meet with US Highway 33 a ways north of Charlottesville, and we can see we're now getting signed for Culpeper once again, while 33 is being signed for Richmond going eastbound and Harrisonburg going west. But look, on our next mileage trend, Washington is our primary once again from 99 miles away. And here in Culpeper we meet with US Highway 15 as for some reason 15 and 29 are getting two separate pull-throughs. And here in Culpeper we meet with US Highway 15, and we're now going to have a concurrency with that highway. And for some random reason 15 and 29 have two separate pull-throughs instead of just one combined one for 15 and 29 northbound for Warrenton and Washington. While 15 southbound is the one that's exiting here, but for some random reason VDOT did not put a south for the exit. They're just making you guess that 15 southbound would exit here. Come on, man. Up in our next mileage time, we do get Washington still as our primary from 72 miles away. Here, still in the Culpeper area, we meet with US Highway 522 along with Virginia Highway 3, which once again is another one of these highways I definitely want to make a video on someday, as they'll be heading towards Fredericksburg and Mineral respectively. Here's where we meet with US Highway 17 now, and 17 and 15 and 29 are all going to be heading towards Warrenton and Leesburg. No, that should be Washington DC. Leesburg, they're favoring US Highway 15 here. US 29 is the more important of the three highways. That should be Warrenton and Washington. Or just do Washington and Winchester because US 17 is also heading toward Winchester. No need for that Leesburg on here. VDOT have Washington. But our next mileage time we do get Winchester, so if they're favoring 17 here on this mileage sign, but no love for US Highway 29. Come on, man. Here's where US 17 splits off from US 15 and 29, and once again, Leesburg and Washington do become our next two prime control cities. Also, we're meeting with US Highway 211 here, but for some reason they're not giving any love to it going this direction on 15 and 29. In our next mileage time, we do get Washington as our primary once again from 41 miles away, along with Gainesville, Virginia, which I'm fine with. Here in the Gainesville area, we split off from US Highway 15 as they'll head towards Leesburg, as we're now getting signed for Fairfax and Washington. In fact, in our next mileage time, we do get Washington as our primary from 34 miles away. And this will be our last mileage time for a good while because we're about to be entering into the Washington DC metro area. Here in the middle of the Manassas battlefield, we meet with Virginia Highway 234 here, which will actually take you over to Interstate 66 along with the Manassas Battlefield Visitor Center. And this all was requested by Gaming with Jeremiah 2, as he lives near this area, so thank you for requesting this Manassas Battlefield Park area. And once we exit out of the park, we are meeting with Interstate 66 for the first time, getting signed for Washington one direction and Front Royal going the other. I mean, Washington is a great choice going eastbound, while westbound you can decide on among yourselves to see what it actually should be signed for. We also meet with Virginia Highway 28 here, getting signed south for Manassas. And we meet with the Fairfax County Parkway, which is being signed for Springfield one direction and Reston going the other. Here we meet with US Highway 50, and we're now going to have a concurrency with it as we head towards Fairfax. And here's where we split off from US Highway 50 in this roundabout here. And US 29 will be paralleling Interstate 66 still. Here we meet with the express lanes for Interstate 495, but we do not have a direct interchange with the free lanes for Interstate 495, sadly. And on our way to Washington, D.C. here, we actually passed by the Metro US 29 diner here. So that is 2 diners named after US Highway 29. That is awesome! And finally, in the Arlington area, we meet with Interstate 66, or we actually met it with it a few times on the way here. But this is our final time as we're going to be crossing over it and into Washington, D.C. here. And once we cross over the Potomac River, we do get a Welcome to Washington, D.C. sign, so that is awesome. Here in Washington, D.C., we meet technically the eastern terminus of Interstate 66, as it's being signed for the East Street Expressway, while now being signed for K Street. Also, I like that cool little US 29 DC shield, so that is awesome here. Like I said in the beginning of this video, US 29 is one of 3 US highways that passes through the heart of Washington, D.C., the other 2 being US Highway 1 and 50, and while US 1 and 50 pass through the heart of the National Mall, the only thing that you get to see on US 29 in DC is a view of the White House. And we actually don't go right next to it, we're a couple blocks north of the White House here. And this here is at the US Highway 1 junction, and we do get signage for US 29, but no signage for US Highway 1. Come on, US 1 is like one of the major roads out here. Give signage to US 1 DC dot. And we're now entering into our final state, Maryland, and for some reason we do not get any Welcome to Maryland sign or like any sign at all telling us that we're about to enter into Maryland. And this here in Silver Springs, Maryland, we are meeting with Maryland Highway 97, and we can see that there is a 29 shield right up ahead of us. And this picture and all these Maryland pictures are going to be provided by Tiger Raven, so thank you for all these pictures, because he actually lives in this area and uses 29 frequently. And here is Tiger Raven's own picture of the Interstate 495 junction being signed for Baltimore and Northern Virginia. And at random junctions here, this is actually on Street View, not when it... You can see that 29 is now getting signed north for Columbia. And here is Tiger Raven's own picture of a mileage chime, and we can see that we're now getting signed actually for Baltimore as our primary from 31 miles away. So that is awesome. Here we meet with Maryland Highway 200, which is a toll road and will take you over to Interstate 95 and 270 respectively. And here at the Briggs Cheney Road junction, we're now getting signed for Columbia once again, so which is okay. And our next mileage time, we actually now get Baltimore still as our primary from 25 miles away, so like I like seeing that. And here in the Columbia area, we'll meet with Maryland Highway 32, getting signed east for Fort Meade and Clarksville respectively. And now we're meeting with Maryland Highway 100 getting signed for Glen Burnie, and we can see that 29 is now getting signed north for Baltimore. And here we meet with US Highway 40, which will take you to downtown Ellicott City, while 40 westbound for some reason does not get any control cities. I feel like 40 westbound should be signed for Frederick, while 70 west should be signed for Pittsburgh, not 40 getting nothing while 70 gets signed for Frederick. I do not like that. And then finally, at our last major interchange is with Interstate 70 here, getting signed for Baltimore and Frederick. No, like I said, 70 should be Pittsburgh, while 40 should get Frederick. And we can see that we also get a mention of Maryland Highway 99 coming up in a quarter of a mile. And after passing Interstate 70 here, we finally end at a junction with Maryland Highway 99. And it kind of stings how US 29 just ends at a state highway instead of like at another major highway. But it is what it is. So with that, we end US Highway 29 and we move on to the places I'll go. So while I technically have been on a little bit of US Highway 29, I do also want to visit places that I haven't been to. So here's my full list. First, I'd love to revisit Pensacola, then visit Troy and Auburn, and actually visit downtown Atlanta instead of just driving through it. Also like to visit Athens, Georgia, and Lake Hartwell, and downtown Spartanburg, and visit the Highway 29 grill outside of Kings Mountain. I'd love to visit Charlotte, and then revisit both Salisbury and the Transportation Museum, and Greensboro. I'd love to visit Lynchburg, Charlottesville, the Manassas National Battlefield, because I've been to a few others. Also, like I did with the 29 Grill in Kings Mountain, I'd like to visit the Metro 29 Diner in Arlington, revisit Washington, D.C., visit Columbia, Maryland, and finally visit the Northern Terminus in Ellicott City. And that ends US Highway 29. Phew, thank you so much for watching that episode on US Highway 29 Northbound. I know it was a bit longer than I expected, but there was a lot to show on US Highway 29, especially in the big cities that it passes through. Also, US 29 is a very cool road. So with that, here are my next few highways. Next week we're going to be doing southbound US 29, so stay tuned for that. But these are the next few highways after that, so if you have any intersection requests for any of these upcoming highways, including 29 southbound, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to shout you out once these highways release. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next week as we do the other direction of US 29. Bye!